Before the Nazca Lines, the hidden history of the desert architects. Introduction: the mystery beneath the dust. Imagine soaring thousands of feet above the Peruvian desert. Beneath you, the earth is a scorched reddish-brown canvas, seemingly devoid of life. Then, as the sun hits a certain angle, the ground begins to speak. Enormous figures, spiders, hummingbirds, monkeys, and strange alien-looking astronauts stretch across the pampa with a precision that defies the technology of their time. These are the Nazca Lines, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and a riddle that has captivated the world for nearly a century. But there is a flaw in how we usually tell this story. We treat the Nazca Lines as a singular, miraculous event, an isolated burst of creativity from a mysterious culture that appeared, drew on the ground, and vanished. We ask, how did they do it? And who were they talking to? While ignoring the most vital question of all: what came before? The Nazca culture did not emerge from a vacuum. The lines were not the first marks made on this desert, nor were they the most complex. To truly understand the Nazca, we have to travel back centuries before the first line was ever scratched into the earth. We have to look at the Paracas culture, the terrifying power of the El Niño climate cycles, and the ingenious water engineering that made civilization possible in one of the driest places on Earth. This audio journey explores the prehistory of the lines. We will dig through the layers of the Pampa and Nazca valleys to find the ancestors, the people who first looked at the desert and saw not a wasteland, but a temple. This is the story of the architects who built the world's largest sketchbook, and it begins long before the first hummingbird took flight in the sand. Chapter 1: The Pampa Precursors, the Forgotten Ancestors. Long before the Nazca people cleared the dark volcanic pebbles to reveal the light-colored sand beneath, their predecessors, the Paracas culture, were already masters of the landscape. Dominating the region from roughly 800 BCE to 100 BCE, the Paracas were the true pioneers of the geoglyph. If you travel to the nearby Pampa Valley, you will find geoglyphs that look fundamentally different from the classic Nazca figures. While the Nazca Lines are famous for being best viewed from an airplane, the Paracas geoglyphs were carved into the sides of hills and mountains. They were designed to be seen by people standing on the valley floor. These are not just geometric shapes, they are figurative and narrative. The Paracas topora style features strange humanoid figures with large, staring eyes, often referred to by archaeologists as the decapitator or the supernatural being. These figures are often depicted holding severed heads or ritual knives. Unlike the Nazca Lines, which are mostly continuous, single-stroke drawings, the Paracas figures were created using a combination of extractive and additive techniques. They would remove dark stones to create light areas and pile them up to create shadows and outlines. Why did they draw these figures on the hills? The answer lies in the Paracas' obsession with the ancestors. For the Paracas, the landscape was alive with the spirits of the dead. By placing these towering figures on the slopes, they were creating a visual dialogue between the living in the valley and the spirits on the heights. This chapter explores the transition from the Paracas to the Nazca. We look at how the shift in artistic style mirrored a shift in social structure. The Paracas were a society of small, competing chiefdoms. Their art was aggressive and anthropomorphic. But as they evolved into the Nazca culture around 200 BCE, the focus shifted. The figures moved from the vertical hillsides to the horizontal desert floor. They became more abstract, more geometric, and significantly larger. The audience for the art changed from the people in the valley to something or someone much higher up. Chapter 2: The Water Architects, Survival in the Seared Earth. To understand why a culture would spend generations drawing on the ground, you must first understand the environment that shaped their psyche. The Nazca drainage is one of the most arid regions on the planet. Rain is so rare that in some parts of the desert it only falls once every decade. Before the lines could be drawn, a sophisticated system of survival had to be established. The before the lines era was defined by the invention of the puquios. These are an incredible network of underground aqueducts, many of which are still functioning today. The Nazca and Paracas people knew that while the surface was dry, water was flowing deep beneath the earth, filtered through the Andean foothills. They dug deep trenches and lined them with river stones and huarongo wood, creating tunnels that brought water from the mountains down to the parched valleys. To keep the water flowing and allow for maintenance, they built ojos,
spiral-shaped chimneys that allowed air into the tunnels, regulating the pressure and providing access points. From the air, these ojos look like geoglyphs themselves. In fact, many archaeologists believe the geoglyphs and the water systems are inextricably linked. The lines weren't just art, they were a map of the water. Many of the large trapezoids and straight lines on the pampa aligned perfectly with the underground aquifers. In this chapter, we dive into the engineering brilliance of these ancient people. We explore the sunken gardens, mahames, where they excavated deep pits to reach moist soil, allowing them to grow corn, beans, and cotton in the middle of a wasteland. We realize that the ability to control water gave the priests and leaders the divine right to rule. The geoglyphs were the ultimate religious thank you note to the gods who provided the water. Without the pukios, the Nazca Lines would never have existed, because the people wouldn't have survived long enough to draw them.
Chapter 3. The Cult of the Dead, Textiles and Trepanation. To know the people before the lines, we must look at how they treated their dead. The Paracas and early Nazca cultures had a relationship with death that modern observers find both fascinating and macabre. In the 1920s, archaeologist Julio C. Tello discovered the Paracas necropolis, a massive burial site containing hundreds of mummy bundles. These bundles were like time capsules. Each body was placed in a sitting, fetal position inside a basket, then wrapped in layer after layer of the most exquisite textiles ever produced in the ancient world. These textiles are a window into the pre-Nazca mind. They are embroidered with many of the same symbols we see in the geoglyphs: flying shamans, pampas cats, and double-headed serpents. The level of detail is staggering. Some mantles contain over 150 different colors of thread, made from alpaca wool and cotton, dyed with plants and minerals. But it wasn't just what they wore, it was how they shaped themselves. The people of this era practiced cranial deformation. From birth, a child's head would be bound with boards to elongate the skull. This was likely a sign of social status or tribal identity. Even more shocking was their mastery of trepanation, the practice of drilling or scraping holes into the skull to treat head injuries, or perhaps to release spirits. Amazingly, evidence shows that many patients survived these surgeries, with bone regrowth occurring around the holes. This chapter explores the spiritual why behind these practices. The Paracas and early Nazca were a culture of transformation. They believed that through ritual, drugs like San Pedro cactus, and physical modification, a human could become a supernatural being. The geoglyphs were an extension of this belief. Just as they transformed their own bodies and their textiles, they sought to transform the very face of the earth. The desert floor was their greatest textile, and the lines were the threads. Chapter 4. Cahuachi, the Pyramid City of the Pilgrims. As the Paracas culture faded and the Nazca culture rose to its height, around 1 CE to 500 CE, a central location emerged that would govern the creation of the lines, Cahuachi. Cahuachi is often called a city, but that is a misnomer. It was a ceremonial center, a massive complex of adobe pyramids and plazas overlooking the Nazca Lines. For decades, it was believed that thousands of people lived here. However, recent excavations have shown that Cahuachi had a very small permanent population. It was a place of pilgrimage. Twice a year, thousands of people from across the desert and the Andes would trek to Cahuachi. They brought with them pottery, textiles, and offerings. They came to witness rituals, to feast, and most importantly, to participate in the creation and maintenance of the geoglyphs. This chapter examines the ritual economy of Cahuachi. We look at the Great Pyramid, a structure that was built by modifying a natural hill, encasing it in adobe bricks to create a tiered monument. We explore the discovery of ritual caches containing severed trophy heads, which were buried as offerings to the earth. The Nazca Lines were not a one-off construction. They were part of a living, breathing ritual cycle centered at Cahuachi. The lines were cleaned and walked upon by thousands of pilgrims. Archaeological evidence, including broken pottery found at the intersections of lines, suggests that people didn't just look at the lines, they walked them. The geoglyphs were sacred labyrinths, pathways for prayer, where the movement of the human body was just as important as the shape on the ground. Cahuachi was the brain of the system, the place where the cosmic order was maintained and where the commands to draw the next line were issued. Chapter 5. The Ending of the Lines, Climate, Crisis, and Legacy. Every great civilization faces its reckoning, and for the Nazca, that reckoning came from the very thing they worshipped, nature. Around 500 CE, the climate began to shift.
The El Niño cycles, which bring devastating floods followed by extreme droughts, became more frequent and more severe. But the Nazca people may have accidentally contributed to their own downfall. To build their cities and heat their kilns for their famous polychrome pottery, they cleared vast forests of huarango trees. The huarango tree was the keystone species of the desert. Its roots go deeper than almost any other tree, holding the soil together and helping to regulate the moisture in the ground. By cutting down the forests, the Nazca removed the desert's natural defense. When the inevitable El Niño floods hit, there was nothing to hold the earth. The fertile topsoil was washed away, and the irrigation systems were choked with silt. In this final chapter, we look at the collapse of the Nazca culture. We see a society that grew increasingly desperate. The later geoglyphs become more frantic, more geometric, and less figurative. It was as if they were shouting at the gods, begging for the rain to return to its proper cycle. By 750 CE, the Nazca as a distinct culture had disappeared, absorbed by the rising Wari Empire from the highlands. They left behind their lines, preserved by the unique climate of the pampa, a thin layer of stagnant air that protects the ground from wind and erosion. What is the legacy of the before the lines era? It is a story of human resilience. It is a reminder that we have always been a species that seeks to leave a mark, to find meaning in the harshness of our environment. The Nazca Lines are beautiful, but they are only the tip of an iceberg that reaches deep into the ancient past. They are the final, magnificent echo of a conversation with the divine that began with a single Paracas figure on a lonely hillside nearly 3,000 years ago. When we look at the lines today, we shouldn't see an alien mystery. We should see the culmination of 1,000 years of human engineering, artistic evolution, and spiritual devotion. We should see the Paracas, the water seekers, and the pyramid builders. We should see ourselves, a people trying to make sense of a world that is often silent, beautiful, and dangerously dry. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden history of the Nazca and Paracas civilizations. We hope this exploration has given you a new perspective on the before that made the now possible. The desert still holds many secrets, and every year new geoglyphs are discovered, reminding us that the story is far from over. Until next time, keep looking beneath the surface. Thank you.